Creativity can feel like magic when it works. Like when you get that sense that it's like almost otherworldly, like what's being dumped in your head, for lack of a better term, is not just you, but it's almost like something you couldn't have thought of, something you couldn't make up on your own. Now, I'm not a professional artist, and you don't have to be one in order to access kind of that creativity flow. And when I really learned to tune into my intuition, that's when I could tell that there was something magical and special going on when I would get into that flow of creativity and access my own intuition at the same time. What I like to call the intuition creativity loop, and how to access it. Where does it come from? What to do when it's stuck? Part two to this video is actually going to be an exercise that you can do to sit and brainstorm and sit in your own intuitive creativity loop to break through any issues you're having. You may ask yourself, why does that creative flow sometimes feel otherworldly or like something you can't quite grasp that's like just out of reach? And for me, it really comes down to three different things. Number one is the way that we typically think about brainstorming for any kind of process, including one that's creative, is that we think about it. We use our brain to be very aggressive about our thoughts and try to get those down on paper. This process creates pressure. It kind of blocks your creativity when you think about it. If I'm trying to use my head to do something that really should come from the heart, from the gut. When we use our creative intuitive flow, it feels more organic and natural. And I'll talk about that in a second. Your creative flow is not fragile. It's actually just waiting for you to kind of quiet down and push against that process. Then it needs to come from your head. The other reason why I think it feels so otherworldly is that I think that there's something called a creativity intuition loop. What do I mean by that? Well, when you use your intuition, you're raising your vibration. You are engaging in energy that is part of you, but also faster and lovely and just such an uplifting, soul fulfilling energy. When that meets the creative energy, those two things meld into something that's completely different. And that's why it feels like maybe it's coming from somewhere else. And then once you're in that creative flow, it creates its own faster energy, almost like building on itself, which then feeds your intuition again to start believing those messages and things that you're feeling. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that keeps going around and around and around. I like to think about your intuition as the doorway, and the creative flow is what flows through that doorway. So, the more that you can open up that doorway and utilize the tools that you have, the more freely your creativity is going to flow. I also believe that creativity is not just for those who are talented. I believe it's a frequency that you can access by doing some activities to kind of engage that intuition creative flow. Now, I'm also a psychic medium, so I speak with spirit all the time. So I add in number three, which is a spiritual element to this. When you're connecting to your spirit guides, when you're able to talk to loved ones who've passed, or at least get their advice on what you're doing, and when you're able to kind of sit in the power and harness that power, that's when that creativity intuition loop feels like it's raising its vibration and coming from an otherworldly source. Let's talk about quieting your mind and dropping into that flow. First off, why does that thinking mind block the creativity? As I mentioned, if you think about being in that thinking phase, you're using kind of the upper parts of your brain. You're using your thinking mode, and sometimes you'll get yourself stuck in survival mode. Have you ever been thinking about a project and you're like, well, here's all the things that will go wrong if it doesn't go right? That is your mind thinking. That is not your intuition talking. It's almost like your fear and anxiety are overtaking what could be a creative process. And why doesn't that work? That doesn't work because there's too much pressure, there's too much noise, and you'll just get stuck in that loop. Anyone who's done this creative process knows that breakthrough ideas don't come from thinking harder. It's almost that you have to feel into the energy and almost cultivate that to come to you. Let's talk about shifting into your body for this creative process. So, if you think about we're up here and things are going nuts, and this is our survival mode, what we want to do is center our energy around our heart center and even our solar plexus, which is just a little bit lower. I like to think about your intuition as kind of living in the feelings of your body. So if you pay attention to what your heart center is doing, what your solar plexus, what deep down in your stomach those feelings are doing, that's where your intuition starts. Imagine yourself kind of feeling into that energy. Next week, I'm going to walk you through a deeper meditation on engaging that creativity, intuition flow. But if you don't want to watch that whole thing or just want a quick to do, I would suggest kind of lowering your attention into your stomach and pushing that energy out into the universe and asking for additional creative energy to come close to you. Now, the last thing I'll mention on this is it's oftentimes very important for you to ground. What do I mean by that? Sometimes when we're in the creative flow, we feel like we're floating up here in the ether, and you can feel like your head is floating or you're disconnected from the earth that we live on. And sometimes that can be very important to kind of come back down and feel the earth beneath our feet, feel the breath in our body, and feel ourselves kind of center back down into ourselves before we start the creative process, and most importantly, after we're done. Two of the easiest things I have for this are literally to go outside and walk in the grass or hug a tree. I'm not kidding, it does help. Or you can kind of put your hand on your belly and put your hand on your head and kind of center the breath between those two places and feel your energy kind of drop back down into your body. So let's bring spirit into the conversation. How do you access that spiritual energy, that high level of frequency, in order to help you use it in your own creative process? For those of you who already have a spiritual connection, I'm just going to give you some bullet points here. So you can ask for spirit to come closer and give you additional information. You can show spirit where you feel stuck. You can ask for clarity, inspiration, or direction, just those simple words. Then I would ask for you to notice anything that's happening in your body. So if you're getting sensations or hearing anything, seeing anything, or knowing something to be true, use that. That's your intuition, your spirit guides coming to you with additional information on this creative process or this creative issue. Spirit guides don't just like hand you the information, they're just helping clear the pathway for that creative energy to come to you in the best possible way. Think about your spirit guides as collaborators or amplifiers of a creative energy that's already inside you. Why does this work with spirit? Spirit sees the bigger picture. They see kind of the broad strokes of what our lives are supposed to be like. They see kind of the end result of where you will be at the end of this creative journey, and they're helping you get there. They're guiding you towards alignment with that energy or the energy of your intuition. They're not making it perfect for you. So, how do I know when I'm not in that flow of creative energy? The first thing is I will notice that what I'm hearing, those voices in my head, those words that are coming through are very loud. Usually, anxiety, doubt, anything like that comes to you very loud and repetitive and just won't kind of leave. It's very sticky. So if you feel like you're stuck or you feel that the energy is literally sticky, this might mean that you've moved out of the flow and into your head. Have you ever tried to force it and everything just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse instead of better? I know that in my own craft, I've tried to make something work so many times and you get so frustrated that it's not working that eventually the whole thing feels like it just like shuts down. That is not being in the creative flow. These are all signs that you're pushing against that creative instinct, and it's not in a flow like a river, a flow like paint, a flow like words on the page. And instead, it's like you're pushing against a door. That's when you know it's time to stop, reset, and try again. Let's say you're out of the flow and you want to get back into the flow, but you don't have time for a whole 20-minute meditation that I'm about to give you. The first thing I will say is take a break. As any creative knows, the second it starts to all not work, we want to just force it. And that's when your head's engaging, not your heart, not your gut. My advice is to walk out into nature. Your pets can also be key in here. If you just sit down and pet your cat, your dog, your bird, your bunny, whatever you got, if you just kind of sync with their energy, it kind of resets your brain. Yoga flow, breath work, anything that you're doing to reset your body from panic mode up here into kind of feeling into the energy of your heart center, into your stomach, that will slow down your body. I would also suggest like letting that feeling move through your body. And you can go through a sensation exercise of what do I see? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I hear? Those can be somewhat resetting as well, of just like reintroducing your body into the sensations of the world around you versus being in your head and panicking. The last thing I will say is put the phone away. Engaging in doom scrolling social media, that's also not going to help with this creative flow. Now, if you've reconnected to all of your senses, you've done the body work, you've done all of that, but you're still in your head too much. The next thing to do is really think yourself out of it. So remind yourself that this brain freak out is exactly that. It is your brain freaking out and panicking. It is not actually part of the creative process. If you start feeling those what ifs, those playing out the scenario, able to take the sentence of, I'm worried that this, and then keep going, 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 recognize that's fear and doubt talking very loudly to you. That is not your own intuition. Note that rejection is part of this creative process, both external and internal rejection. Something not feeling right, something not being right, the energy not being right, and also someone saying, this isn't for me. Your goal in life is not to make everybody else happy. In this creative process, what you're doing is aligning to your internal goal, aligning to your internal voice. And eventually, what that means is it will find its audience, which does not mean every single person. Let's say you've reconnected to your senses. You have done that kind of mind check in that we've just talked about, but you're still not quite feeling it. The next thing I would suggest is changing location. So get the heck out of the house, get out of the studio, get out of the room where you're in, where you're trying to do this creative thing, and go somewhere else completely. Now, as I mentioned, the best place to go is definitely nature and just for some much longer time there. But if that's not possible, go to the bank and pay your bills. Go to a long yoga class that's outside of your house. Do something that's completely unrelated to the creative process. And usually using your body to do that will help to kind of reset. After you do that, I would check in with how your body feels. So you've grounded yourself, you've done these movements, you've talked to your brain, you've talked yourself off the cliff, so to speak, and then you've moved your body outside of this area. How does your body feel? Now, it should give you some internal signals of, okay, it's time to go back into the creative process, or it's still time to pause. You can kind of ask your body what it feels like doing and then follow its lead. Now, what if you're saying, I'm on deadline, I'm this, I'm that? I'm going to tell you, you could sit in a chair and try to force something to come through for as long as possible, or you can try to kind of follow the intuition lead until that inspiration comes to you, and that will feel much easier and much more organic. I highly suggest doing my meditation that will loop in your own intuition, the feelings in your body, with spirit guides, with your own creativity and creative energy, and kind of loop those all together. Sometimes from that place where we draw that energy really close to us, that's where inspiration can really be born. Your creativity is not a talent, it is a frequency. And your intuition is not some mystery, it is a muscle that you can learn to flex. When you combine them, you unlock this breakthrough energy that will help you with your creative intuition flow. I hope this video helped you. Leave a comment below as to which part really resonated with you and if you were able to break through some of your creative blocks using these techniques. My name is Emily Snyder from Connected Intuition. As always, stay open, stay curious, stay connected with Connected Intuition.